Hey everybody, welcome to Finding Korea. I'm Katie, a Korean adoptee, and for most of my life, I ran away from that. Finding Korea is me starting to get more curious. It's a series about what it means to come back to something that was always technically yours, but never really quite felt that way. I'll be sharing my thoughts and my feelings, as well as talking to experts on aspects of Korean culture and life, and those who have their own stories. I'm figuring out as I go, and I'm bringing you with me. Today's guest is Jenna Lee Kim. She's adopted from Korea and grew up in Pennsylvania, became a mayor, built what looked from the outside like a perfectly put together life, and then started pulling the threads. One phone call from her adoption agency sent off a chain of events that eventually landed her on Jeju Island in reunion with both sides of her family and watching her life fall apart and come back together at the same time. So let's get into it. Hey Jenna, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm honored.
Can you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself and kind of where you come from and your background?
Sure. So my name is Jenna Lee Kim. I was born in Korea and I moved to the United States when I was adopted at almost a year old. I grew up mostly in Pennsylvania, and it is 2026 at the time of this recording in May, and I have been in Korea, back living here for almost 3 years now on the island of Jeju. I came into reunion very unexpectedly with my birth family in 2022, and my kid's dad and I and the kids, we moved here in 2023. And prior to that, I had a couple different careers and lifetimes, as middle-aged people do. It's like we had many lifetimes by the time you hit your mid-40s. And so, yeah, that's just a little crash course of where I am now and where I came from.
Yeah, amazing. And then, so I assume, was it your adoption story that brought you back to Korea?
Yes, it was many, many things, but mostly that. Like a lot of the early 80s Korean adoptee babies, I don't want to speak for everybody, so I'll just speak for myself, but having come into consciousness about how adoption actually impacted my entire life and thinking about race, culture, identity, all of the things that bring us into awareness about the journey. I call it the journey. I don't think that there were a whole lot of us that were explicitly told, hey, there might be information in Korea other than the records that your parents had in their filing cabinet, for the past 40 years. So for me, I went on the Me in Korea Motherland tour, the Me in Korea Mosaic tour, which I can't say enough about. It's an amazing organization run by a Korean American who was born in Korea, and she and her family have dedicated their lives to helping adoptees understand Korea, come back to the country, do a birth search, all that stuff. So I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I sort of signed up because a friend said she was going to go, and I really like my friend, so I thought, great, we can go on a free vacation.
Was it free?
It wasn't a vacation. You have to pay to get yourself over here, but then they have sponsorships, and they're a nonprofit and they raise money so that
Whoa.
all your accommodations, traveling around, buses, trains, meals,
Wow.
all of the excursions. We could do a whole episode on the Me in Korea Mosaic Tour. It's just phenomenal, and it's very, very adoptee centered. And so on that trip, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I found people from all over the world adoptees who came on that trip. And I'm not even sure that I really could have told you that I understood that there were Korean adoptees outside of just the United States. So the Netherlands, Germany, Australia, Canada, there we all were together. And at some point I realized prior to the trip, oh, Jenna, maybe you should start being a little intentional about this big trip you're taking to Korea. If nothing else, you're taking a big trip to a continent you've never been to. Maybe you want to look up some tourist sites that maybe you want to check out. Like, it kind of started as that, and then I very quickly realized some of this comes from being a little older and not just jumping into things the way I used to when I was younger. Oh, I should probably be intentional about this. So I started reaching out to childhood friends that I knew who were fellow Korean adoptees. I was exposed to the heritage camps when I was growing up. I had a lot of
I did that too.
very cool things that I got to do, but they all just go over your head. They just go when you're not ready to see, when that part of your
Yeah.
brain is not ready to be quite turned on. There could be like a Korean parade in front of you, and you would still be like, la 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 la.
Yeah.
What? So, I grew up feeling very much like a white girl in Pennsylvania from New Jersey, right? And I knew that I was Korean national. I knew I had Korean heritage. I knew I was adopted, obviously. But it's so normal, like it's normalized for you in a really healthy way. I mean, in some ways it was really healthy, you know, like you are our daughter, we love you, the end. But as we know, that's not the end. And so as I started pulling the threads, I mean, I'm telling you, Katie, when I first started down this journey and learned that there were podcasts about Korean adoptees, I literally was like, what do we have to talk about? Like, what are these people talking about? That you were in the marching band growing up? Like, who cares?
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
no idea. I just didn't know. And so then the many, many, many pillars, race and identity, birth family search, your relationship with your adoptive family, like community, it was just a fire hose of information. And I was working in local government at the time, but mostly I was a stay-at-home mom. And that was a lot of work, but it also meant that I had some flexibility throughout my day to listen to podcasts, do some reading, reach out to people, and just start pulling those threads. So by the time I got to Korea on this tour, I was like, first of all, going to meet my birth father, who they unexpectedly uncovered in the process of, you know, they did this for everyone. You know, everyone on the tour sort of gets a deep dive into their adoption history and records, and the organization itself has a relationship with, at the time, the adoption agencies who were responsible for giving us our records. That's all changed now, but even just 4 years ago, so, you know, Min Young calls and they're like, okay, let's look up these records. So then my agency called me on one February evening, and I was like, why is my adoption agency calling me? This is weird. And at that time, I had no understanding that this was even weirder, that this doesn't just happen to adoptees, that you get a phone
Oh,
call
okay, yeah,
saying,
yeah.
like, we found your birth father. So within that 8-minute call, I learned a lot of very fundamental, very big things all at one time. A, other records exist. B, it's possible to find them, and it's been possible this whole time. You were just not paying attention. I'm not going to blame myself. No one told me either. C, that I have a birth father out there who is the one who dropped me off at the orphanage, which that was not on my paperwork. It was a lie. It said that the police did. And also D, that he's still alive and he left so much information, including his ID number, his address, like that he probably wants to meet you and you can probably find him. So I learned all of that in a single phone call. And I'm sitting there like, what? And then I started learning more, and people are like, this happened to you? Like, this doesn't happen to anybody. Then in the process of coming here, that's a whole long story, visiting, going home, having a slow nervous breakdown, and my life started to unravel. Is when, like, you're not the person that you thought you were for many, many years, with the shiny exterior and all the things. So we made the decision to move over here because of this fluke job opportunity that was like the perfect job for my kid's dad. Why not? Let's take a chance, move over here as a family. In the visa process to come over here, they found my original birth registry, kind of like a birth certificate in Korea, which
Okay.
had my birth mother's information and ID number on it.
Oh,
So that also
oh my God.
fell right into my lap. And so we lived in Korea for about a year before I told myself, like, Jenna, you live here, you need to try to find her. And it was good time. I mean, there's never a good time, right? But it was right before everything started to happen with NCRC and the record transfer and all of that stuff. And so I contacted my agency. They found her right away. And then the spring of the first year that I lived in Korea, I met my birth mother and that whole side of the family. I had already met my birth father and his whole side of the family. And he's been, married since. And I have a half sister, I have a half brother, I've got cousins, I've got
Oh
aunts
my
and
gosh.
uncles and first cousins once removed and all of that. So when I say it has been a whirlwind, it really has. It makes me tired
Yeah.
just talking about it, and I haven't even told you all the details.
That's wild. And I would love to talk more about like meeting your family, but I also know that's a whole kind of like separate topic as well. So maybe we can dig into that
Whatever you want to know.
another time because that yeah, that I mean that is just that's wild. So like what was your relationship with adoption growing up?
So I think it is, and this is the hindsight talking, right? This is many
Yeah.
years now of reflection. Like when I tell you I have been on this eat, pray, love journey for like 5 years now of just really unearthing and unpacking lots of therapy, lots of reflection, lots of literally dismantling my whole life in order to get to a place of picking up the shards of glass to see which ones truly are a part of me. It's been a whole thing. So this is all with like, I'm going to say it so easily, but it has taken a long time to get here, right? So when I look back, I want to give my parents the credit where it's due. I mean, they are very black and white, here's how it is, not touchy-feely boomers. But in some ways, that is beneficial to a kid who's looking for very black and white answers because, there just isn't a lot of nuance when you're a child. So we love you, you're our daughter, the end. I have memories of, or maybe my mom just told me and I don't really remember, but, you know, grew up in a very painfully rural area, but once in a while going to New York City, going to Washington, D.C., seeing older Asian folks who were very confused to see a middle-aged white couple with a little Asian baby in a stroller, right? And my mom was just very, you don't mess with my mom. This is my daughter. And we had books, the books that you have in the 80s, like Why Was I Adopted was a big one. We Adopted You, Benjamin Koo. Like there's these like adoption books, right? Like they talked to me about it. I always knew love makes a family. You are ours. We wanted you so badly. Therefore, we're going to be very overprotective of you, the whole thing. And they asked, do you want to go to Korean culture language class on Saturdays an hour away? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But they tried. And like I said before, I had this great opportunity to go to the heritage camps with other adoptees. That was a powerful moment more so than I thought at the time. Things again are just normal when you're a kid. They're just normalized. But growing up, starting at the age of 13, 14 with other Korean adoptees, that probably really impacted me in a positive way more than I thought because I was an avid journal, I still am, like an avid journal keeper, all, from like the sixth grade onward. And when I started going to this deep dive about myself before we moved to Korea, I was packing up the house, coming across my old journals, reading them. Like I was reading my senior
Oh
year of high
man.
school journal like it was a K-drama. Because I'm like, wow, what happened next? Because that was the year of 9/11. That was the year of like all kinds
Oh
of, right?
dang, yeah.
So, what's interesting is, I reference my high school friends here and there, but like I really talk about my Korean adoptee pen pals because we were literal pen pals. Like we were
Oh, okay,
writing letters to
interesting.
each other, to Kara and Kristen and like all these friends. And I think it's interesting looking back. Like I would not have said at the time, oh, that was so impactful. But it clearly was. Like I'm writing about
Yeah.
like my first serious boyfriend was a Korean adoptee. So it was just like
Oh, interesting. Okay.
everyone has a Korean adoptee in their family. It was just this
Yeah.
is just what happens, right? But when you flip it on its head, like in Stranger Things or Alice in the Looking Glass, when you flip it on its head, my best example that I like to give people, especially non-adoptees that are trying to understand this,
Yeah.
we are told, so many of us, your birth mother loved you so much that she wanted a better life for you, so she sent you away. When you flip that on its head, my birth mother loved me so much that she sent me away? What? Right? So, flipping everything on its head, I really think that actually, because of the way I personally am wired, that really stunted me. I didn't come into some of these realizations because it was just so normalized for me. Like, well,
Okay, yeah.
this everybody's got an Asian person in their family, and we all love each other. Like, what? Like, why would I ever think about my birth family? Why would I ever think about Korea? Why would I ever think about how there were no Asian people on TV or in my world, and I was craving some sort of role model or some sort of older Asian person who looked like me to just take me under their wing. I didn't know that existed, because why would I know that? And why would I question it? Because everybody who's important to me has an Asian person in their life. So I think looking back, it's like, wow, that was beneficial. And at a certain point, I needed, like during the teenage years, okay, there's a little bit more to it than just we love you, love makes a family. There's the fact that you're an Asian woman and you're going to now go out into the world to like online date as an Asian woman, and you have no awareness
Yeah.
that there's something different happening there. Because I'm just like, I had such a block about anything dealing with Korea, or, I got very nervous around big groups of Asian people. Like, I don't want them to think I'm with them. I don't want other people to think that I'm with them.
Oh my God.
Right?
Hard same. Hard same.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's this, people call it imposter syndrome, but there's like a real discomfort there that when you're 15, you can't describe that.
Yeah.
I have really distinct moments from my best friend in high school, white girl from Pennsylvania, where we would be out at the mall and I would very clearly say things like, look at that Asian girl. And she'd look at me like, do you mean the girl who looks just like you? And I'd be like, well, no.
It's different.
It's different, and I didn't come around to racializing myself, which was a whole process, which is such a weird thing to try to explain to people, Asian or otherwise. Because in some ways, when someone is meeting you as a stranger, in some ways they see you a little bit more clearly than you see yourself, because they're seeing, oh, look, Korean girl. And if I try to explain to them, well, yeah, but I don't feel Korean. I mean, how can anyone possibly understand that?
Yeah.
So back to your original question, there was a whole lot of stuff that I either was ignoring willfully, didn't see it at all because I had huge blind spots. And all of it was based from love and support, and we want to just make it very clear, you're our daughter, we don't see you any differently, etc. But that does inadvertently, this was not done on purpose, inadvertently does erase a big part of the core of who you are. So for me, when I was 40 and like clearly middle-aged and thought I had everything worked out, here I am, I'm mayor of a small town, I got my 2.5 kids, I got my house, my picket fence, I got married, I did everything I was supposed to do, I got the master's degree, I can just coast for the rest of my life, and I've got this shiny exterior and a great Facebook following, and now you're going to tell me that everything I built my life on is wrong? What? I mean,
Man.
when I tell you that my life systematically fell apart, like I watched it happen. And I'm such a high achieving, like I can accomplish 15 things in 3 minutes. And I really like that about myself. It makes me feel really good. And so my capacity for getting things done and thinking about things, and I can manage that. So the fact that I got to a place where even I knew, oh, you can't manage this anymore. Like, you need to get some help. So I found, thank goodness, like the best therapist at the right time. And she introduced, parts therapy to me, all the things. And I'm just sitting there like, wow. Look at all this stuff. And again, like I said before, all of the many pillars of topics. I mean, we haven't even talked about history or culture or, colonization, or we haven't talked about any of that. And this is all stuff that was new to me, again, at 40. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's so hard to get distinct. It's so hard to explain to folks who are just learning about it for the first time, adopted or otherwise, or parents of adoptees. What do you mean that what we gave you should have been more? But how could they? They didn't grow up Asian in a white world. And as much as they want to say that they don't think it's different because that was the PC thing to think and say in the 90s, it's not that it was ill-intentioned, but there's just so much more that we needed to become part of our normal story, just as much as we love you, you're our daughter. Cool. And you know that you're different, and here's why, and you have a past, and here's where you came from, and here's why, and all of that would have been really helpful. Appropriately. Like when you talk about how I'm going to have a menstrual cycle someday, that's about the age that you should have said. Also, you have a birth mother, and here's probably how this happened because of the Korean history and war and all the things. Yeah. So
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And also like I'm kind of having that moment now. I feel like it started in the pandemic when I just had a lot more time to think, and we were talking so much more openly about racism and microaggressions, and I was like, "Oh, I've been suppressing all of this because I've been trying to avoid like racism." And that is, of course, something that like white people wouldn't have had the experience to know to like talk to me about necessarily. And then also grappling with like feeling like if I dug into it more, then like it would make others feel that like I was ungrateful or things like that. Just kind of like all of those feelings. And I'm kind of just starting this journey. And so it's also a little bit comforting to hear that other people are having similar thoughts and going through
Girl,
similar things. And
I always tell people, unfortunately, we have to learn things the hard way. I don't know
yeah,
why it has to be that way, but it does. And I'm going to say stuff, but obviously, you'll figure it out when you're ready at the right time. But I do sort of say, like, because I really like people and I really love connecting with people, and I got very obsessive compulsive about listening to all the podcasts that, originally I didn't know why they existed. But then I got it. I was like, oh, all these stories. So between the many podcast interviews, the work that I do now, and the advocacy and connecting with people and just like talking to people, I have probably heard, I am not kidding you, like 400 stories of it, like at least. I probably lost count at this point. There's a lot of similarities. There are the people who are smart and put together the, identity development theories. And I mean, it's smart because we do kind of go through a similar awakening phase. There is the like, I want to do something about this, like kind of advocacy phase. I want to start writing. I want to start connecting. I want to start supporting other people. That's a very clear phase. And we all see it so differently at different times. And of course, like when you were born makes a big difference. All these
yeah,
factors, right? But it is the best thing ever when you talk to someone and you can go, oh God, I'm not crazy. Thank goodness.
yeah, yeah,
Or that thing that I couldn't articulate it and you said it. Let me write that
yeah.
down because now it doesn't matter who you are. Finding validation in either strangers or people that you admire or just a friend, there is almost nothing more powerful than that. And we have to do something with that validation moving forward. But I feel it. So just know that you're not crazy. I've done the research. We have all felt the
Great.
same thing.
Excellent to know. And it's funny that like you bring up the podcast because I had found the podcast a little while ago and I started listening, and then I had to stop listening because I mean I guess I just wasn't ready because I was like, these people are like bringing up traumas and like things that like I don't have, and they're like making me have it. And but it was just like I hadn't explored that part, and it was just kind of like shut off. And so now, or maybe in the future, I am more open to like listening to those. But I was like, they're talking about things that do not pertain to me, but it's like making me question myself and if it does pertain to me or not. And like it's like putting trauma onto me when I was really looking for connection, and I had to like stop. But it's just so funny because it is very like up and down as well, like being
That's
open and then really being closed off to it when you kind of confront something, and then being curious again, and
That's real. I'm reading The Body Keeps the Score right now. And the amount of
oh
stuff that he talks about that is, if something happens to you and your brain literally cannot do this. Because in America, we're very like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like mind over matter, you can do it. And his research is so very clearly, actually, if there's something in your brain because of X, Y, or Z, who knows the reason, that physically is keeping you from being able to confront or acknowledge or see X, Y, or Z. That is so real. Because, yeah, I know
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about. on a more surface level, I would hear people say grief, mourning, trauma, and I'd be like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I had a great childhood. I mean, I got piano lessons, I was taking voice lessons, I got
Nice.
to go to Germany in high school, like I got my master's degree. Everything is great. I don't know what you're talking about. And now now I really get it. And then, like what you're saying, like, oh, wait, there were children who were stolen off the streets. I am not ready to hear that right now. I'm still processing the fact that I'm Korean. Can we just
Yeah,
we just take, can we just take a moment here, folks?
yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it. You know, with my birth family and all the things. Because if I had really sat to think critically, because I consider myself mostly a hard worker, but reasonably intelligent, and thinking, what are the chances that your birth parents were only children with no cousins? The chances of that are so slim. So of course I have family in Korea somewhere. Even if my birth parents are dead, of course there's got to be some, but I never allowed myself to even think that far.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's real blockage there.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy. And kind of once you open that box, I feel like, man, there's
Oh,
so much to dig into.
there's no going back.
Um, what would you say, like, kind of you were expecting before you moved to Korea versus what you found when you actually did move to Korea, or were they kind of similar?
Oh, I was so busy. Again, this is hindsight. I was so busy single-handedly packing up my single family home with two toddlers to take care of and a 17-page to-do list of like all the things you need to do to like move, but also move to a different country, right? And like
Yeah.
as a sidebar, you're kind of closing your whole life. Like when you move to a different country, it's like you're, I mean, not to be morbid, I mean, people were saying goodbye to us. I mean, we were like closing down bank accounts, phone numbers. I mean, you know, so I was dealing so much with that. And that, like I was mentioning before, I mean, that is my wheelhouse. Give me a to-do list. I don't need to think about anything else. I can get that stuff all done. I finally had to have friends who, again, see you more clearly than you see yourself sometimes. They're like, you know, you were moving to a different country, right? Like, did you think that was going to be super easy? I'm like, I don't know what I thought. I kind of did, actually, because my kids had, we had an apartment when we came over here. They were helping us with our visas. All we had to do was show up, right? So all of the things that you just don't know what you don't know. I mean, that's such a
Yeah.
t-shirt saying, but I didn't understand the many different subcultures I was going to be confronted with here. I had very high expectations about how things were going to go with my birth family. Like I thought we'd be seeing each other like once every month, once every 2 months in the very least. I really came over here like, I have enough English speaking white friends, so when I get to Korea, I am only going to be friends with Koreans. Mic drop. Yeah, well, that's not sustainable because, like,
Korean?
first of all, I don't speak Korean. Second of all the Korean moms over here are not just Korean moms who some of them speak very good English and some of them speak good English but don't think that they can speak good English, so they feel a little uncomfortable like being your friend, right? But also we're at an international school on Jeju where everyone is driving some kind of fancy Porsche and wearing Fendi. And so that's a whole other level of Korean that is just, you know, I got myself a Kate Spade purse this past summer and I was like, you know, look at me. Yeah, it's just like it's a different language in many different senses of the word. So to answer your question, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I didn't know. I just sort of thought I'd come over here, my kids would finally be in school, so I'd have all this time to write and be in Korea, which it did feel that way a little bit. I mean, my kids had a really difficult adjustment period. That sucked. I mean, it sucked for everybody, probably especially my kids. And then once they kind of got past that, then I had a short window of, okay, cool, I'm in Korea, I can write, I can see things, like I live in a tourist area, it's beautiful, like I am getting to know other Korean moms, and this is great. And then my life kind of blew up and my marriage ended, and then suddenly I was back to the checklist, moving out, finding a place to live, opening a Korean bank account, trying to find work, like trying to deal with all that entails in a different country. That was super difficult. So then I was sort of distracted by that, but was still trying to figure out what it means to be in Korea as an adoptee, and then I met my birth mother and spiraled all over again. And so I haven't had a very, I mean, there is no typical story that we have, right? But I haven't had a very typical move to Korea. And actually, there's a bunch of us over here, and all of our stories are very different. So there's no typical, but
It hasn't been very linear.
yeah, right. And so I just don't know. The only thing I can say is that these 3 years have been the absolute most difficult, I mean, most difficult time ever. You know, I mean, I have my health and my kids' health, and I am thankful for that every day. Honestly, another t-shirt saying, but truly, because with everything else that we've been going through, I'm like, thank goodness we are healthy, you know, knock on wood. But apart from someone being sick, I mean, this has been so hard. And even that first year, and even last year, which was actually exponentially harder than that first year, I have moments where I'm like, I cannot believe this is my life. Like, this is, no one gets to do this. This is the absolute best thing ever. That 5 years ago, if you had told me that I'd be getting on a plane over spring break and going to meet up with 2 Korean adoptees who basically I met on the internet, but who are now some of my closest friends, and we're going to go around Vietnam together. I mean, please. I mean, who gets to do this, you know?
Yeah.
I've had Christmas celebrations with my half-brother on my birth mother's side and his daughter,
Wow.
who has the same name as my daughter, and they're the same age.
No way.
That's been awesome. I've sat around the table during Korean Thanksgiving Chuseok with my birth father and my aunts and uncles and stepbrothers and kids, you know. Who gets to do that, right? It's been so extraordinarily difficult, but the experiences I've had, I am trying to be like very centered and mindful in this stage of my life. It's not going to last forever. And so I am just like, wow, this has been so hard, and I wouldn't trade it. It's been amazing. The people I've met, now I know you seem awesome. You know, all of these things are just, it just wouldn't have happened if I had stayed in Pennsylvania with my white picket fence, living the life that I thought I had perfectly built. You know, I had perfectly put together the foundation, again, only to find out that that foundation was not real. I mean, so much of it was not what I thought. And so, yeah, the falling apart stage and the rebuilding stage. And unfortunately, we're going to be rebuilding our entire lives. That's what they tell me. Like, you know?
I mean, I think that's life though. And like the people who are brave enough to go deeper and take risks, like yeah, there are going to be like lower lows, but like you were saying, there's also going to be like higher highs. And yeah, I think that just is that's life. But that's crazy. All of those different experiences is wild, and something that I know little me never would have even pictured, even ever being curious about kind of any of those experiences. So that's.
Yeah, I always said, oh, I'm not interested in Korea. Like, I want to go to Europe. You know, I want to go anywhere else. And I know that that was a real blockage for me because if you don't have to confront...
Well, culture too. It's like racism and just like a very Western point of view as well, and wanting to fit in and...
Exactly.
And stuff like that, so...
All that stuff.
Do you feel like after having spent time with your birth family that there's things that you understand after having met them that you never would have learned about yourself if you had never met them?
That's a to be continued kind of question, but it's a really good one. I look just like my appa. Like there were several reasons I didn't need to get a DNA test, which there's actually some advocacy folks who really, like if you meet who you think is your birth family, you get that DNA test, because unfortunately there have been record swapping, and you know, I know of a couple of people who formed relationships with who they believe to be their birth family only to find out that it's not. And I mean, there's almost
my God, that's like trauma over again.
Right.
Oh my
How
God.
devastating would that be, right? So I'm just putting that out there for my advocacy friends who would want me to say that. Get a DNA test. But there's several reasons I didn't have to. One is that we have the same face. But two, I mean, when I found my adoption records that were in the orphanage where he left me, there was actually a picture of me as a baby. It's very clearly me, and his ID with, it's the whole thing. So anyway, when we saw each other, it was still kind of at the tail end of COVID, and Korea was much more conservative about it than the United States, and so we were wearing masks. And someone took a video, and I really treasure this. Like, they took a video of us meeting, and in the video you can see, we hug, and we kind of pull apart from each other. And I don't remember doing this, but like, it happened. We look at each other, like we can only see our eyes, which is like a shame, but we can only see our eyes, and we both kind of look at each other like, yep. Like, we both have a very similar, yep. And then someone, like his wife, kind of interrupted the moment, and then it was gone. Then it was over, But we had there was like recognition there in a way that I kind of can't explain. And so he is we are very similar, I would say. It's hard to tell because, he's a man and he's an ajashi, and we have had very different lives. But personality-wise, I can tell he's very social. He's the guy who will drink some soju at a campsite, and then he's talking to everyone and making friends, and then they invite each other over to their houses, and they eat food, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, well, that's where I get that. So there's some of that. And the stark contrast, because I have to remind myself, I mean, I see so many families where the biological kids and siblings and parents, they couldn't be more different, right? So just because you're biological, and I try not to give unsolicited advice, but when people are about to meet their birth families, there is like so much, you don't know what that's going to be like. There's a lot of pressure, even if you're telling yourself there's no pressure. And I always want to be like, just remember, like, a lot of biological people are not the same. You don't look alike, maybe, just be careful. But for me personally, I am just nothing like anyone in my family in the States. Like, we just could not be more different.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Like, could not. I mean, my mom and she gave me my love of flowers and photography and manners and maybe some fashion. I mean, learned things, right? But in terms of how we are wired, I would kind of joke, like, well, it's very clear I was adopted. I'm the social one. I talk too much. I want to go out too much. I'm an extrovert, and my whole family is just like not like that. So meeting people who are like me in that way, just by chance, that's how it happened for me. It's very, there's some like, or even just being in Korea. And again, this doesn't happen. I mean, there are some real taste bud things where I'm like, oh, there's a reason I always really liked coleslaw, or, because I grew up on very like white people food, searching for something. So there are some that really do click. Yeah.
I have been really, like, I don't want to say preoccupied, I guess just like interested in the nurture versus nature discussion, because just like for me, I think I'm so curious about it because I've only ever gotten to see the nurture portion of it. So to me, it's like, oh, well, like, it's all nurture because that is all of who I am, except I have no idea because like I could go either to Korea in general or like meet my birth family and be like, holy crap, actually, like, all of these things I do because like they also do that too. And so it's a little bit of a mind fuck because I just don't know. And so I just find all of that really interesting, and there's different arguments either way, and I'm sure it's at the end of the day it's kind of like most things where it's a little bit of both. But you have families that have two kids or even identical twins that are like totally different from each other or think differently than like each of the parents or whatever. So it's all a lot of different things and experiences and lives lived and stuff. But I think I'm just so interested in it because I just haven't ever gotten to see what nature, or question or explore what nature gave me. And so that part makes me curious.
I will say that, and this is such a cop-out answer, but some of the things are difficult to compare based on what you're saying because the culture over here, especially the culture of our parents' generation, I don't know how old you are, but like 65 plus, right? That Korea is so different than even today's Korea. I mean, which makes sense. I mean, same thing in America, right? Like people who are
Yeah.
70 have a very different viewpoint of people who are 40. And so my appa he is not stuffy or formal, but he is traditional. So we are still sitting on the floor in his farmhouse, and he also is in the country. I was always meant to be on an island in the country somewhere, apparently, because he also lives in the country, right? But he, the culture is so different, and I don't know what kind of things I would have been exposed to. So it is hard. Like I like things to be very orderly. Is that because I grew up with my mother who's 100 times more orderly than me? Would I have been orderly like that in Korea? I don't know. That kind of thing is hard to tell because it's not comparing apples to apples because like the generational culture stuff is so different. You know, it is people like to kind of glorify Korea a little bit, especially nowadays with how popular it is, but it's very patriarchal over here. It's getting less so, but they're at least 50, 60 years behind where America is when it comes to discussions about, you know,
Oh,
women's
interesting.
rights, LGBTQ. I mean, we are just in 2008-ish is when they started to not automatically give the father and the father's side of the family the kids if there was a death or a divorce. Even a death,
Oh,
mothers did not automatically get the kids. They went to the father's side of the family. And so
wow.
this is a different conversation for a different time, but you know, as we think about being women growing up in Korea, potentially now people are not poor anymore. You know, we were sort of told your family's so poor. To be fair, Korea was poor in the late 70s, early 80s. They were still just coming out of, you know, one generation removed from a war and occupation, right? So, yes, that probably was true. But my sister drives around in a BMW, my brother has a Porsche, and my appa's got like 3 trucks and a farm. So, like, no one is poor anymore, which was talking
Yeah.
about a mind F, right? Like a mind fuck. I'm like getting there, like, wait a minute, all of you were supposed to be poor. Like, actually, I'm the poor one. Can you treat me to barbecue because I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't have any money, you know? So it's very interesting to like watch all of that. So I would say yes and no, but I think it's all just coincidental. You know, if
Yeah.
I just happened to be an introvert and I met my appa, I'd be like, well, there goes that theory, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so it's
And it's impossible to know because like it didn't happen. There is no way to ever know, but I think it's really interesting to think about. And just as somebody who has never gotten to see any kind of bits of myself biologically in another human, just kind of what that would be like and what that would look like.
it is it is not, I'm going to say a double negative. It is not crazy. But for me, it is mostly a mental game. Like I still have to sit, and it's a little bit, fortunately, I mean, I'm really lucky that it's a little bit commonplace now in a really good way. Like I've been to my appa's farm enough with my kids and sat around with like uncles, aunts, and like other Korean relatives enough that it's no longer weird, but I still have to like say to myself, holy crap, these people are related to you. Like in a different world, you would be just like your sister driving up in your Beamer, like from the city, like showing up in your Dior to sit on the floor on the farm at Chuseok, right?
Man,
I,
yeah.
you know,
God, that's so crazy.
my sister is actually who I look to the most for the what if game. She's quite a bit younger than me. She's 7, 8 years younger than me. And I don't know. Well, let's just say all things happened, but I had stayed in Korea, right? I would have grown up with my appa, and she would have come along later with different mom. And she like had a very difficult childhood. I mean, she doesn't talk about it a lot, but it was not butterflies and rainbows. She got to grow up with genetic mirroring in the culture that she was born in, and she knows Korean. And her childhood kind of sucked in a way that mine didn't. She didn't get to go to college, she didn't get to go further education, but as a result, she worked really, really hard, which I think is where I would have been too. She started, ran, and sold a restaurant franchise by the time she was
Oh,
32.
holy crap.
Now she's in the wholesale clothing business, which I'm
Oh,
constantly like, I like clothes, whatever. Um, she she's got a little dog. She's got a big apartment by herself.
wow.
She just I look at her and she's got a lot of plastic surgery. She plays golf. I just look at her and I'm like, maybe this, maybe this.
Yeah.
It's not a better life. It's just a very different life. And so
Hmm.
she's kind of my like, okay, maybe that's what it would have been like. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And what about like how does Korean society view Korean adoptees? Like, is there a lot of confusion when they meet you, like expect you to speak Korean and then you kind of tell them your story? Like how does society, or I mean, I guess you could probably only mostly speak to Jeju, but like, yeah, how have you found that reception to be? That is where we're pausing for part one. I keep coming back to something that Jenna said about her half sister, how she looks at her and plays the what if game. I think that's one of the stranger things about being an adoptee is there's always a version of you somewhere that you'll never fully know, and it's really hard to know what to do with that. Part two is coming soon. We get into how Korean society actually views adoptees, big change in adoption records, how culture has villainized our views on birth mothers, the patriarchy shocks us again, uh, and how our bodies might remember more than we think. Find Jenna on Instagram at mayor.jenna.explorers, or you can just Google Mayor Jenna. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss part two. And please share this with anyone who might resonate. I never really realized how cathartic it would be to talk to somebody who came from a similar background. I've just like, yeah, never gotten to have these conversations before, and it's really nice. So share this if you think of anybody, or if it's you, feel free to reach out. Would love to chat. And see you in part two. Bye.